Dykstra Hall, the first co-ed residence in the country, the first dorm on the hill at UCLA, and the last place Michael Negrete was seen, on December 10th, 1999, here on the 6th floor. Listen as we speak to Jeff Chobanian, the acting captain of the UCPD, William Hodgman, the director of special investigations, and even a friend who was there on December 10th, 1999.
My name is Mia Fernandez, and you are listening to the Nightly Bruin. Let's start at the beginning. Michael Negrete disappeared without a trace 25 years ago. He was born on March 25, 1981, and grew up in San Diego with two brothers. He was a talented musician who played trumpet and steel drums in a band called Island Fever. The 18-year-old freshman was here at UCLA on a music scholarship. But on December 9, 1999, before he had disappeared, he performed with his band in a concert. That final performance would prove to be significant. After the concert, he attended a party with 15 to 20 other students in Dykstra Hall. At around midnight, he returned to his room and began playing an online computer game with a friend who lived in the same building while his roommate was asleep. At 4 a.m., he left his dorm to congratulate his friend on winning their match. And after that, his friend witnessed him walking back to his dorm, which was the last confirmed sighting of Michael Negrete. When his roommate woke up at 9 a.m. on December 10th, Michael was gone, but all of his belongings remained, including his wallet, keys, and shoes. As minutes turned into hours and hours turned into days, a search was launched, with police searching garbage chutes and construction sites on campus. Bloodhounds tracked his scent to a bus stop at Sunset and Bellagio, about a mile from campus, where the trail ended. Police interviewed bus drivers and riders who were on the buses at that time. 7 months later, a UCLA student came forward with information, reporting seeing a 35-year-old Caucasian man hovering around Dykstra Hall at approximately 4:35 a.m. on the night of Michael's disappearance. The student provided a detailed description so investigators were able to construct a sketch. The witness had reported the sighting during the initial investigation, but local law enforcement didn't pursue it at the time. No activity from Michael has been recorded since his disappearance. He sent an email to his mother hours before he vanished, including plans to come home for winter break. So what happened to Michael Negrete? To this day, no one knows. The case escalated from a missing person to a potential homicide investigation. His family put up $100,000 to hire 2 private investigators. Several theories have emerged over the years. Please keep in mind that when discussing these theories, none of these have been proven and are only speculation into the possibilities. One of the theories includes a 2013 Tumblr post from Negrete's brother. This post indicates that Michael began attending raves and experimenting with drugs, ecstasy in particular, during the weeks leading up to his disappearance. His brother wrote that he suspects that getting involved in the scene led to Michael's disappearance. Another theory suggests that he left the building and went to Bellagio Street and Sunset Boulevard to meet with somebody that could have been linked to the disappearance. However, there is limited evidence because his computer's shared drive was erased while in campus police custody. There's also another theory that has circulated. There were many construction sites around the campus at the time of Michael's disappearance, and he may have accidentally fallen into a site pit, and this may have been covered up by a construction company. However, police thoroughly searched construction sites and didn't find any evidence of this. Another possibility indicates Michael Negrete died inside Dykstra Hall on the 6th floor as a result of an overdose or a violent altercation, and his body was removed by students who fabricated a story to mislead investigators. An alternate explanation suggests he deliberately vanished from UCLA due to finals or academic pressure. As I mentioned, this is all speculation, and no theories have been proven. What we do know is that Michael Negrete is still missing, and we share this information today as it has been 25 years since he disappeared. Now, Olivia Miller will speak with experts on this matter.
Thank you so much. So, just to start off, would you all like to introduce yourself?
Sure. William Hodgman.
Jeff Chobanian.
Wonderful. And what's your affiliation with this case and just with UCLA in general?
Sure. So my affiliation with UCLA is I'm temporarily the operations captain. They call it an acting captain, normally a lieutenant, and I oversee the investigations division. And my title is Director of Specialized Investigations. And since May, I've been working with the UCPD in an advisory assistance capacity with regard to the unrest that occurred last spring, and just helping UCPD any way I can.
Okay. And what is your affiliation with this case, and what do you know about Michael Negrete?
Sure. So it's what we consider a cold case, meaning that it is a case that all the leads that the police got at the time were exhausted, and now there are nothing further actionable to follow up on. So my role is to oversee the detective division. We every once in a while look at cases, cold cases, and see if there's anything that we can follow up on, any new information, new technology, things that might assist us in solving the case. And my role is I became aware of the case just earlier this week. I was asked to review some murder books from the UCPD, as well as the Sheriff's Homicide Unit. My experience base was that I was with the LA County District Attorney's Office for 39 years. I've tried many murder cases. And so from that perspective, I was asked to take a look at the books and see what we had.
Okay. And could you walk us through just where we are right now and because it's a quarter of a century later, what's going on now? Where does the investigation stand? What kinds of these efforts are being made to look into it? Like how is this angle changing and evolving?
It's a good question, and it's a complicated question. So once all leads are followed up on, then it goes into something called due diligence, where every once in a while a detective will look at the case and review the case. So based on the notes that we saw when we reviewed the case, last year, the investigative lieutenant took a look at this case, reviewed the book, tried to assess if there was any new information they could follow up on. At the time, the lieutenant determined there was nothing new, and so put the book away. And then we got it back out this week, actually, in preparation for this podcast, and we started looking at it again. And we started talking about what are some things that we could do now, potentially. One of my backgrounds is in technology investigations. And so is there new technology available that we could use? And because of the type of evidence that we have in this matter isn't impacted by the developments in technology with cell phones, with computer forensics, with mobile forensics. We don't think from that perspective that there's any new follow-up that we could do. Now, that doesn't mean that the case is just closed, but that is one of the delays that may be caused in us trying to crack the case. Yeah, and just to add in, the Sheriff's Homicide Bureau was active in the case back in 2000 through the end of 2001. The case remains open with Sheriff's Homicide, but since late 2000, there have been no new clues, no new contacts.
Okay. And could you walk us through what we know about some physical aspects of the case, like the areas involved in the search efforts that occurred? I mean, we did go in earlier about in the past, but just maybe nowadays. Where do we look now?
Yeah, so from a universal perspective, we're not looking in any specific place because we have looked everywhere. So to kind of give you some background, in reviewing the documents, and both Bill and I were not directly involved in this case, but we have a lot of experience in different capacities. It was a very thorough investigation. And when we went out on the internet to kind of see what people thought of the case, we saw some critiques of what law enforcement did. But what the police officers, what the fire, what the community service officers, what ORL did at the time, they searched every piece of this campus. of Dykstra specifically, no stone was left unturned. They talked to every single person in this building, which it was about 900 people lived in here at the time, something like that.
900 questionnaires went out. Yes.
Yeah. So they sent out 900 questionnaires. They sent a person down the trash chute. So a person actually went in the trash chute and rappelled down to look for any clues. They searched every spot in this building specifically, and then all around campus as well. It's not like this one building, but because this was the last place that he was seen, they really looked at this building. So to answer your question directly, we're not necessarily looking anywhere specific for the remains.
Okay. And this did occur during finals week. So, or when it happened in 1999. How do you think this timing could have affected what happened?
Personally, I don't think the timing would have impacted the investigation at all. As Jeff said, the investigation was exhaustive. I was very impressed with the detail, the comprehensiveness of the investigation. Each dormitory on campus was surveyed at the time. Efforts were made to contact every student in Dykstra Hall. The investigation, again, very detailed, very exhaustive, and I would have to say I was impressed by the very quality of it.
Wow, okay. And how, because you did mention technology and how technology, when it improves and we look at these cold cases with a new perspective. So what's an example of some investigative technique or kind of technology that's developed within the past 25 years that could potentially provide a new outlook?
So for this case specifically, I think that the DNA portion, if we did have DNA recovered, you need less amounts of it now to run than you did 25 years ago. We don't have cell phone tower data dumps, which you have now. And if we had some of those records, we could maybe do a better job tracking exactly where they were. The internet at the time, I actually was trying to find out what it was. So it's called dial-up internet. Here at the Hill, we believe it was DSL. So there's DSL and there was cable internet, these two types of internet. And they believe it was DSL. He had an American Online known as AOL account. So there was some search warrants that were served to AOL to try to get information. There's also something called ICQ, and it's a way of chatting. And so there were some chat logs that we have that could potentially, I don't really even know what information we could get from those chat logs, but we'd have to look and see if maybe from an AI perspective, there's a way we could look at mass amounts of data and get, it's hard to say, like we said earlier, based on our independent review, we don't really see how technology from a strictly high-tech mobile forensics perspective would be able to better this case.
Okay. Did you have anything to add about technology or?
No, as Jeff said, the forensic application of DNA, of course, has progressed by leaps and bounds since 1999. But this is a no-body case. We don't have trace evidence, remains, which might serve to facilitate a DNA comparison at this time.
Okay. And I did hear, I don't know if you know too much about this, about how they used the hounds to smell like his trail and where he was, and then it went to a bus stop, but then they decided not to use that evidence because it wasn't reliable. Do you know about that? Or
yeah, so that's kind of a lot of rumors with that, a lot of partial truths in there. I'll let Bill talk a little bit about the tracking, and then I can explain a little more.
Certainly. Various agencies employed dogs as part of the search almost immediately after the disappearance had been reported to UCPD. LAPD had dogs out here. UCPD had dogs. FBI contributed dogs to the search, and Beverly Hills PD utilized dogs in connection with the underground tunnels, the maintenance tunnels, the steam tunnels, which are underground throughout the campus, all to no avail. There was one instance where a sheriff's bloodhound followed a trail which led to a potential bus stop area. But that particular lead was kind of discounted because there was some sense that the dog may have been confused, and the scent pad that was taken from Michael's dorm room was possibly contaminated by other people's scent. So it really did not lead anywhere.
So when new information comes out about these kinds of cases, what things do the investigators look for?
So, like, if we get a new tip, is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think if all tips generally are followed up on. So in this case, like Bill alluded to earlier, this is a sheriff's homicide case. And the reason it's being treated as a homicide is just because of the nature, the facts of the case. So that's just the way that it's handled. And because it's their case, we would refer any tips to whichever detective is handling it from their agency. So that's kind of the first. The second piece of this is that investigators have an obligation to conduct all their due diligence and ensure that all tips are followed up on. But when you get high-profile cases, you can get a lot of tips. And this case, unrelated to your question, but there was a lot of tips. Things such as calling into question his lifestyle, just inappropriate things that we still follow up on, but we don't want to take rumors too seriously. So it's important that we respect his memory and that we still try to close the case.
The only thing I would add is I know from reviewing the sheriff's homicide book, as it's known, or their murder book, they investigated over 350 clues over time, interviewed over 150 witnesses, and this is in conjunction with interviews conducted by UCPD as well as the FBI. So there were, as Jeff suggests, there were many, many clues that came in, some from psychics, things like that, which ultimately were determined to be unreliable or not credible.
Okay. And given that Michael, he turned 18 some months earlier, how would this case be treated differently if he was younger, if he was 17? Would there be a different level of urgency or like a different outlook or kind of view on it?
There are different legal requirements, but none of those would come into play here because we aren't going to wait 60 days to investigate. So there are certain things that we're required to do by law if it's a juvenile who's under 18. But no, this case was quickly investigated. There was a little bit of delay in reporting, which, no one is to blame there. I think some of the roommates just weren't sure what he was doing. It's 1999, so not everyone had a cell phone in 1999. It wasn't a weird thing for someone to just be gone for a weekend with no contact. And then when he missed a performance on Sunday, that kind of sped this along, and that's when his mother first called the police department. So I don't think that his age had anything to do with the response time.
Yeah, I concur. I didn't see any evidence of any delay based upon age. If anything, once UCPD was alerted, they swung into action, and the investigation right out of the box was very comprehensive.
Okay. So how does this case fit into the broader picture of campus safety just historically on a large scale or even locally, just at UCLA or in LA?
That's a good question. So I think that at a major college campus in the middle of a major metropolitan city, you're going to have some unfortunate things occur. We still to this day do not know what happened. I can say that the university did make a lot of changes based on this case. So the key cards to Dykstra in 1999 to get access were on a Bruin card, but they were actual physical keys to get into the rooms. And so I believe that that's changed. There's now key cards. The security cameras on the Hill. So there are a lot of security cameras on the Hill because of this incident. It spawned them to create housing has a massive security camera presence. So little things like that. There's a lot more that we did, but that's just some examples I think that are tangible that everyone listening will understand because they can see. As part of a bigger part of safety, I don't think necessarily it's indicative of what's normal here, right? So we don't have students disappearing on a regular basis, thank God. It's a very safe campus, and we pride ourselves to keep it that way.
Okay, and another question I had, you did talk about LA being a metropolitan area. Do you think the location of being in Westwood and UCLA, do you think that has anything to do with what could have happened? Or do you think this somehow, I mean, if you would have taken it out of UCLA and put it somewhere more rural or something like that, do you think this has any sort of effect or influence on what could have possibly happened?
So generally speaking, when you're in a population dense area, more is likely to occur. It's just simple mathematics, right? Sample size. The larger the sample size, the larger that something could happen that's further away from what's normal. However, you also have to take the positives of being in a major metropolitan city. You have numerous police departments, like Bill alluded to. You have numerous resources. So if you're in a rural area, you might not be able to get a bloodhound. It might take days, whereas we had them here right away. So you take the good and the bad with being in a major metropolitan city. Obviously, more happens here because there's more people and the population is more dense.
Yeah, nothing to add to that.
Okay, and given the new technology advances, is this something that's likely to occur again, or is it something that we have a better grasp on just with things advancing and technology developing and security cameras?
So nothing is foolproof, right? I wish that there was a way that we could ensure that this never happened again. And I can't, with a straight face, tell you that something like this would never happen again. But with safeguards in place, with technology in place, with cell phones, with cameras, with DNA evidence, we are seeing case clearance rates go up. Now, one of the other issues is that law enforcement as a whole have less people. There's some recruitment issues, so you have less detectives. And so that can also cause problems with follow-up and ensuring that we do everything that we possibly can do for each case.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is as recent as today's news, where a health insurance executive was murdered on the streets of Manhattan. Already within 24 hours, they had security video being able to place them at a coffee shop at various points in time. Potential DNA is there. So there's the investigative possibilities are much greater today than they were in 1999.
Wow. Okay. And how can the community best help with cases like this one?
So the first thing, if anyone has any information, to call our dispatch center, 310-825-1491. So we need to know all the information. Secondarily is the community can always do their best to engage in behavior that makes you less of a victim. And what that means is try to always be with a friend. Don't walk alone. Tell somebody where you're going to be. Ensure you're taking care of yourself. Ensure you're taking care of somebody else too. And I think that when we work together, some people argue that in 2024, we've lost our sense of community. I disagree with that. I think that our community is stronger than ever. I think our partnerships are stronger than ever. I think our relationships with students are great. So really, I think as long as everyone works together to achieve the common goal of their own safety, then other people's safety just organically get boosted up.
And I would add that, a theme often cited today is that if you see something, say something. At the time in 1999, flyers regarding Michael were distributed across campus and in the Westwood community and the business community, all in an effort to, if someone saw something, please say something, take the initiative to step forward and help if you can. I think that sense of community, as Jeff describes it, is even stronger today than it might have been back then. So, community responsiveness would be helpful.
Okay. And is there anything else that you'd all would like to add about the case or that we didn't cover?
No, I would just say, my thoughts and prayers go out to the family. This is a tragedy. And this not only was a tragedy for the family, but it was very tragic for this university. When Bill and I were talking with people around the station that, hey, we're going to go do this. Keep in mind, this happened 25 years ago. The people who had been there knew exactly what this case was. And you could tell that, they cared about this case. And so 25 years might seem like a long time, but if you're the family member of a lost loved one, it's not that long. And so definitely my thoughts and prayers go out to his family.
And as Jeff suggested, perhaps this very podcast, and to the extent that it's broadcast on YouTube or whatever, if it inspires someone to have a recollection, perhaps they didn't step forward years ago, any new information would be appreciated, and contact the UCLA Police Department. A case can still be worked, even if it's 25 years old.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Olivia. Now we will talk to Ross Wolf, a UCLA alumnus who hosted the party Michael attended before he disappeared.
Hello, I'm Gina. I'm from Daily Bruin podcast and I'm a contributor here. So today I'm joined with Ross Wolf. So how do you know Michael Negrete and what role did he play in your college life?
I knew Michael the first couple months basically of my of college. He lived across the hall from me my freshman year. And we quickly became friends. And he was one of my best friends before he disappeared.
So how did you hear about Michael Negrete's disappearance?
So we actually were the ones who reported it to the police, or I think it was the police, or the FBI. I think it was the LAPD or campus. I don't remember. I don't remember what night of the week, but there had been like we'd hosted a party in my dorm room, and Michael had been at that party. I think it was probably Friday night, and a bunch of people were there. And then he'd gone back to his room after that, which was right across the hall. And then the next morning, he wasn't in his dorm room, and we all just kind of assumed that he'd gone off to like a band practice or something like this. And then I think as the weekend went on, we just kind of realized, I don't remember, probably Sunday or something, like, hey, no one's seen Michael. Where is he? And then I think also maybe he'd missed some of his band practice and someone had called. And so we heard oh, maybe he missed his band practice. And we kind of realized that no one had heard from him. And so we ended up calling the police. And I think I don't know if we were the first people to know, or, it was myself and my roommates. That's how I heard about it, I guess.
See. So what was life like in Dykstra Hall after his disappearance?
I mean, there was, I think it depended probably a lot on the individual, I would say. So, I mean, first of all, of course, at first you this happens and you figure that, oh, there's probably a reasonable explanation and it's probably going to turn up somewhere. And, so I think like at first, it didn't really sink in with a lot of people, how, serious this was and how mysterious it was. And then, in addition, there was, a number of obviously investigations and stuff like that that occurred. So that was, I think, there was a lot of, not everybody knew Michael as closely, right? Because the hall, there's lots of different dorm rooms and people knew each other reasonably well, but like, obviously the ends of the building basically, weren't necessarily good. Like if the rooms weren't adjacent, you knew the people adjacent, closer adjacencies. So, there was like, oh, what's going on? Why are the police here, et cetera. And then I think after that, obviously, as everyone was worried, we went out and we were like trying to like spread flyers and stuff like that. Those who knew him well, I think it was, affected them pretty hard, and they were feeling, worried, sad, kind of like down a lot, I would say. And then over time, I think that, obviously different people recovered at different rates. And so, for some people, it impacted them more than others. So it kind of wasn't like a continuous feeling across the hall. I think different people, took it differently.
See. So you mentioned about flyers, and I wanted to ask you a follow-up question about that. So what actions did you or any close family members or friends of Michael Negrete take in the first months in attempt to find Michael?
Well, we, so I may not remember everything because lots of people did lots of things, but we had flyers. We were going to various neighborhoods that we thought maybe he would have a proclivity towards, and asking if anyone had seen him, showing his picture, putting flyers up with the missing person. So then this was everything from places in San Diego that he'd been to, places in Hollywood that maybe we thought he might have gone to, because like, there was, I think the police at one point thought that he'd gotten on a Greyhound bus, or I don't know if it was a Greyhound bus, but on a bus. And so just like kind of main thoroughfares of like where, people might have seen him, or where there might have been a lot of traffic, places in Long Beach near where he'd lived. And so kind of like just basically any communities that we thought we could raise awareness in. And then obviously working with the police and the private investigators and the FBI as much as possible to kind of assist in them trying to figure out and do their work to try to see if they could see what happened.
I see. What do you think caused this case to lose visibility?
I know the investigations continued, and then after the kind of, I don't know if they closed the police investigation, but I also know that his family had private investigators that were kind of looking into it. So I think that, that was the case. I think for a lot of people, Michael wasn't someone necessarily who they were close to, right? Like he disappeared, school probably starts in like September or something. And I think he disappeared in December, right? And so, most people, it was just an individual who might have lived in proximity to them, right? For a couple of months, they may not have known him very well, et cetera. And so I think that, and then I think also people have to heal, and they can't just worry like infinitely forever about something where there really are no answers, as far as I can tell, right, of what occurred. And so, I think that it's probably to some extent like a self-defense mechanism for a lot of people where they didn't want to be confronted with it all the time. And so, I guess people heal at their own rates, but, again, if they, depending on the closeness of the individuals, right, they might have moved on at different rates. Moved on is the wrong word, but kind of, just either healed or moved on, or whatever the appropriate, I hope you get the idea.
Yeah. Are there any actions currently taking place?
I'm not aware if there are or if there's not. Like I mentioned, I do know that his family had some private investigators that were trying to see if they could figure out what happened. But and I met with them after I'd moved to Washington State and talked to them on the phone a couple of times, but this was more than 10 years ago at this point. I haven't heard anything recently of, besides yourselves, I haven't been contacted by anybody kind of. So there may be things going on, but it's not, I don't have any awareness if or what those things might be.
Is there anything else you would like to add that we weren't able to cover today?
I'd just say that, I'm still sad to this day about it. And, I hope that, part of me likes to hope that somehow, it's still a mystery, right? And so it could have been foul play or something horrible, or it could have been that he decided he was going to disappear, right? And so I like to, I don't know, hope that somehow he's, at peace, I guess is what I would say.
Thank you so much for joining us, Ross.
Thank you.
Before we end, we would like to share a few words from Michael's brother, David Negrete. Michael was my biggest hero. When I became a young teenager, I absolutely looked up to him, and I was so inspired by his talents. And he was talented. Everything was so easy for him: math, physics, and especially music. One of my favorite memories is when he came home one day from high school and showed me a CD of John Coltrane's Giant Steps. I had just started playing saxophone, so he was excited to sit me down and have us listen to it together. He did that quite often with other artists that he wanted to share with me. He always gave me the motivation to play music and be better at it. But he did it by example. Mike was gifted on the trumpet. He had such a bright future with it. Everyone around him was always in awe of the sound he made on it. He won awards and was constantly placed in honor bands and orchestras, both in classical music and jazz, and it came easily for him. Everyone truly loves Mike. We all miss him deeply. To this day, I strive to make him proud. Still, and always, my hero. Thank you all for listening. I am Mia Fernandez, and this has been the Nightly Bruin.